Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, lived a lovely little princess named Snow White. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. She lived in a grand castle with her stepmother, the queen, who was very beautiful but also very vain and cruel. Every day, the queen would stand before her magic mirror and ask, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And every day the mirror would reply, "You, O queen, are the fairest of them all." This made the queen very happy. But as Snow White grew up, she became more and more beautiful. One day, the queen asked her mirror the usual question, but this time the mirror answered, "My queen, you are fair, it is true, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen was furious with jealousy. She could not bear the thought of anyone being more beautiful than her. So she called her loyal huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White deep into the forest and get rid of her. The huntsman had a kind heart and couldn't bring himself to harm the sweet princess. He took Snow White into the woods, but instead of hurting her, he said, "Run away, poor child. Run far into the forest and never come back to the castle." Snow White was terrified. She ran and ran through the dark, spooky forest. The trees seemed to have long, scary arms, and strange sounds echoed all around her. She ran until her little legs could carry her no more. Finally, she collapsed, crying, in a small clearing. As the sun began to rise, the friendly forest animals came to comfort her. The birds chirped sweet songs, and the rabbits and squirrels nudged her gently. They led her through the trees until she came upon a tiny, charming cottage. Snow White peeked through the window. "Oh, how adorable!" she whispered. Inside, everything was tiny. There was a little table with 7 little chairs, 7 little plates, and 7 little cups. Upstairs, she found 7 little beds, all neatly lined up in a row. The cottage was a bit messy, so Snow White, being kind and helpful, decided to tidy up. She swept the floor, washed the dishes, and made the beds. Feeling very tired from her long day, she lay down across a few of the little beds and quickly fell fast asleep. Later that day, the owners of the cottage returned home. They were the 7 dwarfs, who worked all day in the nearby mines, digging for jewels and gold. Their names were Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. As they approached their home, Doc noticed something was different. "Look! The light is on," he exclaimed. They tiptoed inside, their pickaxes held high. "Someone's been tidying our home," whispered Happy. "And my cup is all clean," added Sleepy with a yawn. Then they crept upstairs and found Snow White sleeping on their beds. "She's beautiful," whispered Bashful, blushing. "What is she?" asked Sneezy, trying to hold back a big sneeze. The loud sneeze woke Snow White up with a start. At first, she was frightened, but the dwarfs were very kind. Snow White told them her sad story about the wicked queen. The dwarfs felt sorry for her and invited her to stay with them. "You can cook and clean for us, and we will protect you," said Doc. Snow White happily agreed, so Snow White lived with the 7 dwarfs. Every morning they would go off to work in the mines, and she would sing and clean the cottage with her animal friends helping out. The dwarfs warned her, "Be careful, Snow White. Don't let anyone in while we're gone. Your stepmother might find you." Back at the castle, the evil queen went to her magic mirror. Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest one of all? She was certain she would be the answer, but the mirror replied, "Over the hills, in the greenwood glen, Snow White is alive and well, with the 7 little men." The queen was enraged. She realized the huntsman had tricked her. She decided to take matters into her own hands. Using her dark magic, she transformed herself into an old, hunched peddler woman with a wrinkled face and a crooked nose. She then created a poison apple. It was a beautiful, shiny red apple, but one bite would make the eater fall into a deep, death-like sleep. Disguised as the old woman, the queen traveled to the dwarf's cottage. She knocked on the door, offering shiny red apples for sale. "Apples, lovely apples," she cackled. Snow White, remembering the dwarf's warning, was hesitant, but the old woman seemed harmless, and the apple looked so delicious. "Just one bite, my dear," the queen said sweetly, "to show you there's no poison." She took a bite from the harmless green side of the apple. Then she offered the shiny red side to Snow White. Tempted, Snow White took a small bite. As soon as the piece of apple touched her lips, Snow White's eyes closed, and she fell to the floor in a deep sleep. The wicked queen laughed triumphantly. "Now I am the fairest of them all, c'est recht," and she hurried away. When the 7 dwarfs returned home that evening, they found Snow White lying motionless on the floor. They were heartbroken. They tried everything to wake her, but nothing worked. They cried and cried, believing their dear Snow White was gone forever. They couldn't bear to bury her in the cold ground, so they built a beautiful coffin made of glass and gold. They placed her inside and carried it to a clearing in the forest, where they watched over her day and night. One day, a handsome prince from a neighboring kingdom was riding through the forest. He saw the glass coffin and the beautiful girl sleeping inside. He was captivated by her beauty. He asked the dwarfs to tell him her story. Moved by their sadness, he asked if he could give her one last kiss. The dwarfs agreed. The prince leaned down and gently kissed Snow White's lips. At that very moment, the piece of poisoned apple dislodged from her throat. Her eyes fluttered open. She was alive. The dwarfs cheered with joy. Snow White sat up and saw the handsome prince. They instantly fell in love. The prince asked Snow White to be his wife and come with him to his castle. Snow White said a loving goodbye to her dear friends, the 7 dwarfs, and the forest animals. She and the prince rode off to his kingdom, where they were married and lived happily ever after. As for the wicked queen, when she heard the news, her jealousy consumed her, and she was never seen or heard from again. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more magical adventures.